Welcome
Yes.
to noise11.com. Mike Rudd. Spectrum is what Mike is probably most known for, but there was another side to Spectrum. It was the Indelible Murtceps, and
Yes.
Gil Matthews has gone to painstakingly detail to put out this historic document of, I guess,
Yes.
the end of the band, wasn't it, Mike?
We knew we were dying at that stage. Ray had said he was going to be moving over to join Rosswell. I don't know whether he actually declared he was going to Rosswell, but he was leaving the band anyway. And on that information, I said, well, me and Bill, as usual, decided that that was basically one change of personnel too many, and so we declared that we were going to break up. And I don't know whether we actually had the final gigs at Dallas Brooks sorted at that stage, but yeah, there was definitely a feeling of a last struggle, and which coincided with Peter Dawkins inheriting the band as a producer and sort of producing the last document in the studio, which it was. And look, it's not the most joyful album, but it is the document that we were looking for. We just thought probably a little bit short on material, and actually Ray came to the party and wrote a few of the songs. So it's an interesting document, and it does have both ends of Spectrum and Murtceps on the album sort of jammed together.
The Indelible Murtceps was the same lineup, but you used to support each other. Explain how that worked.
Well, yes, we coexisted, and we had a few occasions at the Cathedral Hall, which was the scene for TF Much and much more ballrooms, where we put on our own shows. And who better to select as our support than our junior brother, Indelible Murtceps. So yes, they used to put on shows together. And I'm actually reviving that concept now at the moment, because we've had a very lovely arrangement with Madder Lake with the double bill shows with Spectrum and Madder Lake. And I'm going to put out a show with the Indelibles, which is sort of a really a band that does all the Spectrum, Murtceps, Aerial material, and have featured the Indelible Murtceps. So it'll be a kind of double bill show, much in the same vein as we used to use the, except in the reverse. So Murtceps is now going to be the star, and the Indelibles are going to be the support band.
I'm very happy for the Murtceps. They finally got there.
They finally did, yeah.
Yeah.
Revenge.
So Spectrum and Murtceps were the same band, the same lineup, but the songs actually were Indelible Murtceps songs or Spectrum songs, weren't they? On Testimonial, Singing the Blues, Hot Rocket, Real Meanie, Spectrum songs. You've also got the Murtceps songs, It Would Be Nice, Who Was Bugging You, Homesick Valley Blues, etc. Did it always fall like that? Did Murtceps only do Murtceps songs and Spectrum only do Spectrum songs?
Yes, and you've reassigned some of those, so it's still managing to confuse people. So, but generally, yeah, you look at the Spectrum songs as being the heavier songs, generally the longer songs. So, Ray's songs were generally in the Murtceps area, but It Would Be Nice is kind of jazzy and a little heavier, so that goes into the Spectrum basket, and it was much easier when we had Murtceps doing their own album and Spectrum doing their own album. But we started mixing it up really in the Miles Ago album. We really had the short, succinct songs, which could have been easily assigned to the Indelible Murtceps, mixed up with the longer, more elaborate songs that Spectrum did.
Yeah, and back then everything happened quickly, didn't it? This album came out in 1973, but this one, the one immediately beforehand, What's Up Your Nose, Indelible Murtceps, it was only like 6 months earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, yes. Band politics waits for no man. And so, yes, we were kind of pushed into in fact, I think really the live album of the band's demise, that's Terminal Buzz, could have easily been released before Testimonial, which was actually the band's last recorded studio album.
Mm.
So things did move fast and very confusingly, and that's my bag, man. I'm a confusing guy.
Well, Spectrum also had two albums very close together in Spectrum Part 1 and Miles Ago. They were like 6 months apart as well.
And I think that had something to do with the fact that there was that 6-month radio ban that was the kind of the inception of the PPCA outfit. And that held everything up. So we actually recorded I'll Be Gone, and then the ban was imposed, the radio ban was imposed, where none of the major record companies were able to actually get anything played on radio. And then I'll Be Gone was released, and very shortly after that, the album was released, which of course famously didn't actually include I'll Be Gone. Oh, what a tortured life I lead. And yes, so everything got compressed but I think it was that initial 6-month ban that made everything even more confusing.
Yeah. Well, when the first records came out, can you explain this record label for us? This is the Harvest record label that,
yes.
When I was 12 years old and bought Deep Purple in Rock, it was on the same
yes.
label.
That's right. And we were very lucky to be picked, we thought, by the Harvest label, which was sort of, I guess it was the progressive arm of EMI. And I think we were the first Australian band to be picked for that label. So we were kind of chuffed to be on that label. And I'm not sure that they were that chuffed having us on the label after a while. But no, it was another selling point for the band, we thought.
Mm. I'll Be Gone, the song that you mentioned that wasn't on the album, it may not have been on the album, but it's become the subject of an entire book.
Yes.
One song makes up a hell of a story, doesn't it, when you put it
does.
into
yes.
that?
It really, look, I'll Be Gone should have actually, the song should have actually been called Someday I'll Have Money. And that would have been a good title for the book too, by the way. There's an interesting story, but I can't remember the details, so I won't go into it. But yes, I'll Be Gone has been the high point, and our career has been gradually subsiding ever since, Paul.
But, I mean, here we are 50 years down the track. We're still talking about it. It still gets played. You must be incredibly proud to have created something that has had this longevity.
Indeed, I don't think it betrays its era necessarily, or its origin, or even its country of origin. It's kind of a song that if I think a lot of the current generation would just accept that it's there, but not really know the story behind it, that it was Australian, even Australian. So yes, I am pleased there. It's got its own niche, which is great.
Yeah. With the demise of Spectrum and the Murtceps, very soon after came Aerial. Before Aerial yes. was the Jalaband Mutant. And again, Gil Matthews has given us insight into that with some bonus yes. tracks on the Rock and Roll Scars. How long were you called the Jalaband Mutant, and why did it go from Spectrum to that to Aerial so quickly?
Well, actually, the Jalaband Mutant occurred after the first Aerial unit demised, spectacularly imploded, whatever you like to describe it. And I retired down to the Mornington Peninsula, and I was quite unhappy and about the breakup of the band, because that band, Aerial, the first band, was a significant band, and we got recognition in London in particular with John Peel, who adopted the band. And so we had great recognition in the UK, and I think even probably a few bands at that time had heard of us. But so the band breaking down, breaking up, exploding, imploding was a severe setback for me, and I kind of retired and started writing bits and pieces, and it turned into be a rock opera, I thought, called the Jalaband Mutant, and then gradually I reapproached Bill Putt because he was playing with Air Supply. Can you believe that? It was a visual shock, let alone anything else. And but I asked him. I went to the Croxton Park, and he was there playing with Air Supply and scraping the ceiling. And I asked him if he'd be interested in getting together again. He said, yeah, sure. And he immediately retired from Air Supply, and we got together and we put together the second album, the second Aerial rather. And it came to pass that we were able to take advantage of the offer made to the first Aerial to record it at Abbey Road. So we presented them with the rock opera, and they said, you can record here, but don't record that. so that's the story of the second area.
So did you actually get to Abbey Road? Did you make it to the studios?
Yes, well, that's what the Rock and Roll Scars album's all about. We actually did record there, but they weren't being entirely generous with their time. So we had a week to record and a week to mix. And imagine at the same time that the Master's Apprentices were hovering around EMI at that stage in London at Abbey Road. They were piddling around for 12 months. So there was quite a different level of generosity.
Yeah. When I used to talk to Jim Keys, the great Jim Keys when he was around,
yes,
he'd tell stories about being at Abbey Road and the Beatles being
yes,
in other studios. Glenn Shorrock has similar
yes,
stories. Glenn Wheatley always used to tell the stories yes, about the Beatles always being around Abbey Road. What? So your story yes, is about you were at Abbey Road and the guys next door were the Masters.
No, well, they may have been there. We didn't actually. Had our heads down. We just didn't see anything that was going on around us. So we missed out on all the general aura of mystique because we were in the same studios the Beatles recorded in, but you wouldn't have known it. And we went from Abbey Road to mixing at Air Studios, and that was possibly even more interesting. I think Bill tells the story of going for a pee at Air Studios and Elton John turned up in a caftan beside him. I just ask you to imagine that scenario.
Yes. Let me just take you back one to something you just said a few minutes ago about Bill being in Air Supply. I mean, leaving Air yes, Supply at that time, that really was a bad decision for his superannuation, wasn't it?
Yes, but, Bill was a romantic at heart.
And we miss Bill dearly.
We do.
Before we get into the Spectrum story, so like Spectrum actually was a split, wasn't it, of you and Ross Wilson and Daddy Cool, and Spectrum all came out of the same band just prior to all of this, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I up until 1969, I'd spent a couple of years playing bass with Ross's band, The Party Machine, and I learnt really a lot from playing with that band. I mean, I wasn't a bass player, but the band was really exploring Ross's writing, and I reckon we probably finished up by playing 80% of his original songs. So we were quite an unusual band for the time, in that we weren't a covers band by any description. We were doing our own stuff, and it was unique. I think he had a real twist on it, and I adopted the impetus from that with my next band, with Spectrum. I hadn't written anything at that stage, but I thought to myself, I'll put a band together and I'll write all the songs. Well, it sounds easy, but it's actually quite difficult to do. But the way it all turned out, that's what happened. Yes, I was a product of the Ross Wilson school of writing.
Well, Ross had told me that he'd written Eagle Rock while he was in the Party Machine. Did you ever hear the song back then?
No, I didn't. I think he went over to the UK and worked for a while with Procession, and did some writing with them. And he was probably he may have easily written Eagle Rock before he left for London, but I didn't get to hear it.
Mm. There's another piece of your history I'm still waiting to come out, the Mike Rudd and the Heaters, the Unrealist. What's the status of that?
Yeah, well, look, there was a moment in agency history where we were cited as being a typical premier artist band, trying to keep up with the times. And I think that's what we were. We were. I was writing songs that fitted in with the kind of new wave thing, and so yeah, we were making a real effort to remain contemporary, I suppose. And the songs ain't bad actually when you listen to them. And we did. I think we recorded just about our entire repertoire live once at RMIT, which I think I've got up on YouTube. And the band was, it was really a hot little band. The Heaters, man, hot.
Boom, boom.
Yes.
Very good. Well, the one to catch up with at the moment is Testimonial. It's fantastic, the work you and Gil Matthews have done together, to bring, all of, these historic Australian recordings back. He
doesn't make a token effort either. He does a fantastic job on mixing it. Well, I say remastering all these songs. He makes them sound better than they were in the first place, and I think that's testimonial to his place in keeping the history of Australian music alive, really.
Yeah, and I guess to do the full Mike Rudd story would take hours. We'd have to develop it into a mini-series, but for people to catch up and find out a bit more, they can with Mike Rudd's Spectrum and How One Song Captured a Generation, Craig Horn's book.
Yes. Yeah, I still have stock, ladies and gentlemen, so approach me on the website, mikeruddbillputt.com.
All right. Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, Paul.